Everyone in the neighborhood knew him, but none of them knew his story. The man who brought letters to their doors for 20 years was actually a hero who had fought for his country. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this story, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help keep these stories alive. The same sound echoed through Maple Street in Denver every morning. The rumble of the Postal Service truck, the clang of metal mailboxes closing, and slow, steady footsteps. Thomas Tom Anderson, 68 years old, had been delivering mail in the same neighborhood for 20 years. Every morning at exactly 8:30 a.m., he'd start at the beginning of Maple Street. Wearing his blue postal uniform, heavy bags slung over his shoulder, packages in hand. His steps were slow but determined. He showed the same care at every house, placing letters neatly, leaving packages securely, never ringing the doorbell too hard. The neighborhood residents had grown used to him. Mrs. Patterson, a 73-year-old retired teacher, would watch him from her window every morning. "Mailman Tom is coming," she'd tell her husband. Mr. Johnson, a mechanic who repaired cars in his garage, would wave at him. "Good morning, Tom," he'd call out. Tom would smile and nod back. The children loved him, especially little Amy, an 8-year-old neighbor girl. Tom would run to the door whenever he came. "Uncle Tom, do I have any mail?" she'd ask. Tom would smile. "Not today, Amy, but maybe tomorrow." Even though Amy was disappointed, she loved Tom's kindness. Tom wasn't a talkative man, just necessary words. "Good morning. Your mail. Have a good day." Sometimes neighbors would try to chat with him about the weather, the neighborhood, sports. Tom would listen politely, give short answers, but never talked about his own life. For 20 years, no one had wondered about Tom's past. He was just the mailman, reliable, punctual, kind. He'd come every day, do his job, and leave. No one knew where he lived, whether he had family, what his hobbies were. Tom's life was completely unknown. But Tom had strange qualities. The way he moved, his posture, how he observed his surroundings. He looked different to those who paid careful attention. When he walked, his steps were measured, as if he'd marched for years. His posture was straight, shoulders back. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, houses, cars, people. Sometimes a dog would bark or a car would honk. Other people would just turn their heads. But Tom would instantly be alert. His body would tense, his eyes would scan the environment, as if looking for danger. Then he'd collect himself and return to normal. Mrs. Patterson had noticed this. Strange, she'd think. Why is the mailman so alert? But she didn't dare ask. Asking Tom questions, wondering about his private life, seemed forbidden. Tom's strangest habit was being late every Monday morning. Other days he'd start at 8:30, Mondays at 9:30. No one knew why. Even the post office manager allowed this, as if Tom had some special privilege. Actually, Tom went to the VA hospital those Monday mornings. Veterans Affairs Hospital. But no one knew this. Tom would quietly receive treatment, then come to work. For 20 years, no one had noticed. Susan Martinez was a 34-year-old teacher, new to the neighborhood. She and her husband, Derek, had moved into the small house on Maple Street. Derek was an Air Force officer stationed at the military base in Colorado Springs. Susan was also an experienced teacher who worked with military families. She'd spent her childhood on military bases. Her father was an Army colonel, her older brother a Navy pilot. She recognized military discipline, military bearing, military behavior. She could distinguish between veterans and active duty soldiers. A week after moving, Susan was sitting at home observing her new neighborhood. Looking out the window, she saw the mailman, an elderly man, blue uniform, heavy bag. But something caught her attention, the way the man walked. His steps were measured, very measured, as if he'd marched in the military for years. His posture was straight, shoulders back, head high. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. This movement pattern was very familiar to Susan. "Derek," she called to her husband. "Look at that mailman." Derek came and looked. "What about him?" "Look at his posture, the way he walks. This man is a soldier." Derek looked carefully. "You're right, but isn't he a mailman?" "He can be a mailman, but he's definitely a former soldier." The next day, Susan was ready and waiting when Tom came to the door. When she opened the door, she could see him up close. Tom's face had deep lines. His hands were calloused. His eyes were eyes that had seen much. "Good morning," Tom said. "Are you the new neighbor?" "Yes, I'm Susan Martinez. My husband Derek is Air Force." Tom's eyes immediately brightened. "Air Force?" There was familiarity in his voice. "Do you have a military background too?" Susan asked. Tom stopped. He gripped the letters in his hand tightly. "Why do you ask?" "Your posture, the way you walk. I recognize this bearing." Tom was silent for a long time. Then he answered briefly, "Long ago." "Which branch?" "Very long ago," Tom said. "Very long ago." Susan didn't insist. She took her mail, thanked him. But her curiosity had increased. This man was definitely a veteran. But what was he hiding? Susan told Derek everything that night. Derek was curious too. "Maybe he's a Vietnam veteran," Derek said. "Most of that age group were in Vietnam. But why is he hiding it? Why is he keeping it secret?" Derek shrugged. "Most veterans are like that, especially Vietnam ones. They went through very difficult things. They don't want to talk." Susan understood, but she was still curious. What was Tom's story? Why was he so secretive? A week later, Susan began observing Tom more carefully. She watched his every movement, how he walked, how he stood, how he observed his surroundings. Everything was very disciplined. One day, when Tom was handing over a package, Susan noticed a thin line on his arm. Very faint, but it was a tattoo mark. The part visible from his shirt was very small, but it was definitely a military tattoo. "Tom," Susan said, "I'm really curious. Do you really have a military background?" Tom stopped. He looked at Susan. This time, he didn't run away. "Yes," he said, "I do." "Which war?" "Vietnam. 1,968 to 1,972 inches. Susan's heart raced. "Vietnam, one of the most difficult wars. Which unit were you in?" Tom hesitated. 101st Airborne Division. Susan held her breath. 101st Airborne, the legendary unit. The unit known as Screaming Eagles. They had been in the toughest operations. "My God," Susan said. You were in the 101st. Tom nodded. "I was a paratrooper, airborne infantry." "Which operations?" Tom's face tensed. "Many operations, many wars, many losses." Susan understood. She shouldn't deepen this conversation. "Thank you for your service." Tom smiled. For the first time, a real smile. "You're welcome." But Susan didn't know that the moment she asked that question, Tom Anderson's memories that he'd hidden for 20 years were beginning to come alive. Because some stories, no matter how deeply buried, come back to life when they feel someone cares. And Tom's story was bigger than anyone living in the neighborhood could ever imagine. Now, I want to ask you, do you have stories about the ordinary people in your neighborhood that you're curious about? Your mailman, your janitor, your security guard. Have you ever wondered what kind of life they lived in the past? Share your experiences in the comments, because sometimes the biggest stories are hidden inside the most ordinary-looking people. Susan went online that night. She typed 101st Airborne Division Vietnam. Thousands of results came up. Everything she read amazed her. The 101st Airborne Division was one of the most prestigious units in Vietnam. They were known as Screaming Eagles. They were special units that parachuted behind enemy lines. They were used in the most dangerous operations. Susan researched operations between 1968 to 1972, Tet Offensive, Hamburger Hill, Lam Son 719. Terrible wars. Wars with heavy casualties. Being a paratrooper was something special. Not everyone could do it. They went through very tough training. They were very elite. And they did very dangerous jobs. Susan found an article, 101st Airborne, Heroes of Vietnam. The article told what this unit had experienced, stories of young soldiers. Most were 18, 22 years old, very young, very brave, and many were lost. My God, Susan thought. Tom was in those wars. He was in those terrible wars. The next day when Tom came, Susan looked at him differently. This ordinary-looking old man was actually a very special warrior. He was a member of a legendary unit. Tom, Susan said, I read about the 101st Airborne last night. Tom stopped. You read? Screaming Eagles, paratroopers. A very special unit. Tom nodded. It was special, but the price was heavy. What did you experience? Tom was silent for a long time. His eyes looked into the distance, as if he was going back 50 years. Many things, he said finally. I experienced many things. I saw many things. I lost many things. Did you lose friends? Tom's eyes filled with tears. Many friends, many young friends. Kids who were 18, 19, 20 years old. Susan's heart tightened. I'm sorry. Me too, Tom said. I'm still sorry. As days passed, a friendship developed between Susan and Tom. Susan waited for him every day. Tom also began to enjoy talking to Susan. One day, Susan asked, Tom, did you ever get married? Tom smiled. I got married. To Linda. After I returned from the war. Do you have children? I had a daughter, Sarah, but... Tom's voice broke. I lost her to cancer 15 years ago. Susan was shocked. I'm so sorry. Linda couldn't handle it. We divorced. Now I'm alone. Susan understood. She understood why Tom was so quiet. He had lost his friends in the war. He had lost his daughter at home. So why did you become a mailman? She asked. Tom thought. After the war, I worked many jobs, but I couldn't stay in any of them. Too noisy, too chaotic, too stressful. Mail deliveries calm, orderly, alone but connected to people. I understand. And, Tom said, serving people still feels good. In a different way, but I'm still serving. Susan was moved. You're a real hero. Tom shook his head. There's no heroism. There was just duty. I did my duty. But you made great sacrifices. Everyone made sacrifices. I was just lucky. I was able to come back. Susan told Tom's story to Derek. Derek was very impressed. This man is a real hero, Derek said. Being in the 101st Airborne, that's a very big thing. But no one knows. No one has known for 20 years. Derek thought. Maybe they should know. But he doesn't want it. He wants to stay hidden. Of course he wants to, but sometimes people need to know. Susan was undecided. She didn't want to violate Tom's privacy, but she also didn't want this story to be lost. A week later, Susan talked to her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson, Susan said. What do you know about Tom? Mailman Tom? Good man. Very kind. Very reliable. Why? I was curious about his past. Mrs. Patterson thought. He never talks. Very quiet man. But sometimes he acts strange. How strange? He reacts very harshly to sudden noises, as if he was in war. Very careful, very alert. Susan understood. Because he really was in war. What? Susan told everything. That Tom was in the 101st Airborne, that he was a paratrooper in Vietnam, that he had experienced many things. Mrs. Patterson was shocked. Really? Our Tom? Yes, no one has known for 20 years. Wow, we never guessed. The news spread slowly through the neighborhood. Susan had only told Mrs. Patterson, but Mrs. Patterson also told Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson also told other neighbors, but no one said anything directly to Tom. Only their behavior changed. A little more respectful, a little more careful, a little more grateful. Mrs. Patterson began offering Tom coffee when he came. "Tom, would you like some coffee?" Tom would be surprised. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, but I'm on duty." Of course. But you know, we're very grateful to you." Tom didn't understand. "Why?" Because we're free thanks to people like you." Tom nodded. "It was my duty." Mr. Johnson also began treating Tom differently, more respectful, more careful. When Tom passed, he would stop his work and look at him. Little Amy also noticed. "Uncle Tom," she said one day, "my mom said you're a hero." Tom smiled. "Your mom is very kind, Amy. Are you really a hero?" Tom knelt down to Amy's level. "Amy, the real heroes are the ones at home. Your mom, your dad, your teacher, they're the real heroes." Amy nodded. "But you're a hero too." Tom smiled. "Maybe a little." Memorial Day was approaching. Tom spent this day alone every year. He would visit his old friends. He would go to Fort Logan National Cemetery. He had friends from the 101st Airborne there. Susan had learned this. "Tom," she said, "what do you do on Memorial Day?" "I usually go to the cemetery. I visit my friends." "Alone?" "Yes, alone." Susan thought, "Would you like to come with us?" Tom was surprised. "With you?" "Derek and me. Maybe Mrs. Patterson will come too. We'll visit your friends." Tom hesitated. He had been going alone for 20 years. But maybe he didn't need to be alone anymore. "Okay," Tom said. "You can come." Memorial Day morning, Susan, Derek, Mrs. Patterson, and Mr. Johnson met with Tom. They had brought flowers. They had brought American flags. Tom took them to Fort Logan National Cemetery. There were 3 graves there, all 3 from the 101st Airborne. "This is Jimmy," Tom said at the first. He was 20 years old. He was a very good paratrooper. He was a very good kid. At the second, "This is Carlos. He was 19 years old. He was very funny. He made everyone laugh." At the third, "This is Mike. He was 21 years old. He was very brave. He was a very good leader." Everyone listened quietly. They bowed respectfully. They left flowers. "How did they die?" Derek asked. Tom was silent for a long time. "Same day, same operation. We parachuted behind enemy lines. It was a very difficult operation. We lost many—" "How did you survive?" "Luck," Tom said. "Just luck." But that day was different, because he wasn't alone anymore. He had friends. He had people who understood. After that Memorial Day, Tom's life began to change. He wasn't completely alone anymore. He had friends in the neighborhood. He had people who understood him. Susan began talking to him regularly. Not just a mailman-neighbor relationship, but real friendship. Tom also enjoyed talking to Susan. Mrs. Patterson began regularly bringing Tom homemade cookies. "Tom, you live so alone. See some of our care too." Mr. Johnson began offering Tom auto repair shop jobs. "Tom, what will you do after you retire? Would you work with me?" Tom would smile. "I'll think about it." Little Amy also began spending more time with Tom. "Uncle Tom, will you tell me war stories?" Tom would think. "Amy, war stories are very sad, but I can tell you courage stories." Amy would get excited. "Tell me." Tom would tell Amy stories about courage, friendship, sacrifice. He wouldn't give war details, but would talk about values. One day, Derek made Tom a special offer. "Tom, there's a program for veterans at the Air Force Base now. Experienced veterans mentor young soldiers. Would you be interested?" Tom thought. "Mentoring?" "Yes, just sharing your experiences, guiding young people." "Do I have to talk?" "You don't have to talk." Just being there is enough to show them that life can continue after war. Tom nodded. I'll think about it. A week later, Tom gave his answer. I'll do it, but I have conditions. What are they? I don't go into much detail, just general experiences, and only once a week. Okay. And I don't quit my mail job. I continue working. Of course. Tom began mentoring at the Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. He gave advice to young soldiers about life after war. At first, he didn't talk much. He just listened. But the young people respected him because he had real experience. One day, a young airman named Jake approached Tom. Mr. Anderson, he said, can I ask you a question? Ask. How did you return to normal life after the war? Tom thought. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult, but daily routines helped. What kind of routines? Regular jobs, regular hours, helping people, feeling useful. Jake nodded. So, how did the fears go away? They didn't go away, Tom said, but they became controllable. It takes time and patience. Jake smiled. Thank you. Tom Anderson still delivers mail on Maple Street in Denver. He still comes at the same time every morning, delivers letters, but he's not just a mailman anymore. He's a mentor, a friend, a hope. Everyone in the neighborhood now knows who he is. They greet him with respect. They listen to him. They value him. And every Memorial Day, he doesn't go alone anymore. He has friends with him. There are flowers, there are memories, but most importantly, there's community. Tom's story shows us this. Sometimes the greatest heroes work in the most ordinary jobs. Mailman, janitor, security guard, they might be veterans, heroes. Now, I ask you again, do you pay attention to the ordinary people in your neighborhood? Your mailman, your janitor, your security guard? Do you talk to them? Do you wonder about their stories? Because there are thousands of people like Tom Anderson, living quietly, serving, waiting, just waiting for someone to care. And you can show that care. You can ask that question. You can give that respect. Do you have stories you've discovered about people in your neighborhood? Have you ever talked to your mailman, janitor, security guard? Do you have curiosities about their pasts? Share with us in the comments. Because these stories aren't just memories, they're parts of our social memory. And we're the ones who keep these stories alive. Share them, remember them. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and share, because people like Tom Anderson deserve respect and recognition. See you in the next story. And remember, if a mailman ever comes to your door, look twice, smile, say thank you, because maybe he's a hero you never knew about. In Tom Anderson's words, heroism isn't doing big things, it's doing small things with great love. Disclaimer. This video is a fictional narrative created for emotional, inspirational, and entertainment purposes only. The characters, events, and situations portrayed are entirely imaginary or dramatized and should not be interpreted as factual representations of real-life individuals or events. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real situations is purely coincidental. This content is not intended to offend, deceive, or cause harm. Viewer discretion is advised.